Imagine that someone came up to the front of the classroom to give a speech on why you should get a cat. They go on and on and on about why their cat is the best and has improved their quality of life. So you should just get a cat too. Is your first stop after class to the Humane Society? Or do you kind of just think you have a classmate who's crazy about cats? Since I can't see your reactions, I'm going to assume you think that you have a crazy cat classmate. And you should. They didn't provide any supporting materials to convince you otherwise, other than their personal opinion. In this lecture, I'm going to discuss the importance of and different types of supporting materials you must use in your speech. Side note, that would be my thesis statement. So what do you need to know? Use facts. Use facts that are verifiable, that are observable, and that have been consistently verified by reputable sources. If you are talking about a topic that you have personal experience in, you can absolutely use your personal anecdotes to enhance your speech, but you want to weave that personal experience with factual information. This slide is an example of how you should incorporate your supporting facts into your speech. So please don't say something like according to www.science.com/corgi study /13 VZE. Instead, you can just say according to science.com, or you can see in the example below how you might frame a quote from somebody versus giving a ton of details about the source that you found the quote from. You will need to cite in your speech as well as in your outline, and these are some examples of how you would do that within your speech. This isn't important for that introduction speech, but moving forward with your other speeches, you are going to have citations required for each of those. Additional supporting materials to use when you are writing and speaking in front of your classmates is you want to make sure that you define your terms and find credible sources that outline those definitions. You can also use vivid descriptions. Using statistics is always great, but make sure that you know how to explain those statistics and that they will make sense to your audience. Use real-life examples. You can use quotes, just like I gave an example of a quote in the previous slide. You can use literary devices, which has come up several times in different chapters as supporting material. And then you can also incorporate visual aids, which might incorporate any of the above things. So you might have a visual aid that outlines statistics or, has a graph or a chart or something like that. Again, just to support what you're trying to tell your audience about. Before I move on, I think it's important to know that all of your speeches, other than your introduction speech, will have a visual aid component to them. You're going to need to use them, but there is a whole section that we're going to do on this topic, so I'm not going to bore you with the details yet, but you need to be thinking about how you're going to incorporate a visual aid into future presentations, and what you're thinking about using and how to appropriately display that visual aid. But again, there will be a whole other lecture and section on visual aids later on, so I won't dive into it too deeply right now. I wanted to leave you with a video from the Colbert Report, but I couldn't find it. About 10 years ago, the show did a report on Wikipedia and how anybody can post on it. I think that is exactly why it has been scrubbed from the internet, because so many people were going in and making false changes on Wikipedia. It would have been a solid demonstration on how toxic the internet can be and how much information is out there that's just not true. I also want to say that I do love Wikipedia. I think it can be a really good resource for you. I think it's great, but it's just a starting point. So if you are trying to find some information on a subject, you can start there, but then scroll down to the bottom and look at where their sources are. Because you want to be using good, credible sources, and you want to be using direct sources for your information. Because as we've talked about in other lectures and in the book, you want to be critical consumers, critical thinkers, critical listeners when you're using the media and when you are writing speeches and when you are putting together your speech materials for your audiences. So with that being said, I will leave you on a heavier note. We will talk more about speech citations as we get a little bit closer to your informative speech, and it will come up again as we start talking about persuasive speeches later on in the semester. Thanks for listening.